Over the last 6 years, I've helped thousands of people avoid the bad picks, the disgusting picks in your fantasy drafts. And we're going to do the same thing this year for 2024 because these are the most disgusting picks in every round of your draft. Do not take them. And look, when we're starting off in round one, of course, these players, when you say disgusting, it sounds a little bit harsh because they're round one talents, of course. And normally I'd be like, okay, I'm forced to pick a guy like Amon-Ra or AJ Brown just because they're all so great we have to pick one. But this year, I actually don't like one of these players. Like, I'm actually pretty confused as to why he's a first round pick. Okay, mid-second round maybe. Third round, yeah, makes some sense. But first round? And that player's name for me is Puka Nacua, who goes as a top 10 overall pick. And immediately you might be saying, are you kidding me, Sal? Do you even watch football? Does this guy watch ball? Did you see what this kid did last season? The 5th round rookie went out there and broke the rookie receiving records, one up Jamar Chase, who's one of the best receivers in the league. Yeah, he did that, and you think he's disgusting? Now, of course, I don't think Puka Nacua is disgusting. He definitely does not look disgusting. He's a fine-looking young man, and yeah, he had all those records last year. But this is based on the other players who go around him, and there's a lot of flaws, in my opinion, for Puka. And the first flaw is his teammate right here, Cooper Kupp. And a lot of people are just writing off Cooper Kupp as somebody who was injured last year, of course, started the camp injured, started the season injured, was injured the entire year playing through an injury. And yeah, he had a down year. Yeah, he's now 31 years old. And everybody's just writing him off as not even going to be a contributor this year. And that's a mistake. Because outside of the people who watch this channel, I guarantee people don't realize how close and basically the exact same production these guys had on the field last year together. Yeah, the exact same nearly. Just check out my tweet right here. Puka Nacua earned 30% of Matthew Stafford's first read target shares compared to Cooper Kupp 29%. So basically the first priority on that play was 30% of the time Puka, 29% Cooper Kupp. Okay, basically the same. And here's the big thing. These guys completed 11 games together. In those games that they completed together, you had Puka Nacua averaging 15.7 points. You can see that right here in this tweet. And Cooper Kupp was averaging 15 points, 14.9 if we're going to be exact. So they basically were putting up the exact same amount of points, the exact same targets, 8.5 targets each. And now they're going 2 rounds apart and everybody thinks Cooper Kupp is dust. So yeah, I'm sorry. There's just enough questions here that when I see Puka Nacua next to guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, an obvious stud and target earner, next to guys like AJ Brown, one of the rare specimens, 150 target season last year, nowhere near the same amount of competition. Devonta Smith is talented, but does not earn the same amount of first read targets. These other stud running backs, the elite of the elite wide receivers up here in Lamb, Tyreek, Chase, Jefferson. Yeah, it's just Puka Nacua doesn't fit in here. So I'm sorry to the Rams fans. I'm sorry to all you guys out there. He's a great player, but for fantasy, he goes too early. Let's go to round 2. Now, if Puka Nacua didn't get a lot of people upset, this next one might. And it's because this guy now goes way too early, in my opinion. He goes as a top 20 overall player, and it's another young stud. Sal, are you crazy? Nico Collins, I'm turning off this video. Well, hold on. Houston, I'm not trying to disrespect you. Shout out Paul Wall. Shout out Bun B. If you know, you know. I think the player is fantastic, but he goes in the top 20. He's not a third-round pick anymore. He's now becoming a middle to somewhat early second-round pick. I mean, if you look in the fantasy blueprint at who he's going before, going ahead of guys like Kyren Williams, going well ahead of guys like Brandon Ayuk and Mike Evans and even Jalen Waddle. You can see right here in the fantasy blueprint, he's going like 10 to 15 picks ahead of these guys, and that's just honestly a mistake. You can get the same type of player at a much better value. Now, of course, I think that this man, Nico Collins, was fantastic last year. You can't really say anything other than that. He finished top 10 in receiving yards, top 10 in efficiency. Actually, not even top 10 in efficiency. Check this out right here. Yards per route run, which is basically like the best efficiency metric we have for a receiver. It takes into account everything, your yards after the catch, ability to get open, yada, yada, yada. Well, he finished second in that metric. He was number 1 if you're talking about downfield receivers efficiency from 15 plus yards downfield. And yeah, he finishes a top 10 fantasy receiver. Everything was fantastic. He's in the prime of his career at 25 years old. And he just delivered everywhere, at the catch point, in the red zone, after the catch. He was reliable for CJ Stroud. But all of this can be true, and we can still say that a top 20 pick on him is a little bit rich because this right here, Stefon Diggs is now on the team. And I've been on record to say that, yeah, I'm not really interested in Stefon Diggs compared to Tank Dell and Nico Collins, the other studs on this team. I'd rather have them first, but that doesn't mean that Stefon Diggs is some sort of wash. He's still definitely, for me, a top 30 wide receiver, top 25 wide receiver. And when you look at who he is replacing in this offense, Stefon Diggs is coming in, and even if he does get the slot role and he's not out there in 2 wide receiver sets as I'm trying to project, he's going to be replacing a guy in Noah Brown, who was fine in spurts last year, had some monster games when Tank Dell and or Nico Collins were out, but this is a massive upgrade. Even if Diggs was on the downgrade last year, he was still earning 140 targets. This is an upgrade, no doubt about it. Stefon Diggs over Noah Brown, which is going to hurt the target share of one Nico Collins. So when I look at where Nico goes right now, and this is the ADP like you can see right here, he's top 20 overall. All the guys who go after him are the guys who go after him. It's as simple as that. Kyren Williams I'd rather have. All these other receivers down here, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, these are like X-tier receivers in Brandon Ayuk and Mike Evans, and you can argue Jalen Waddle and Michael Pittman should be taken above him as well. Even if you don't think they should be taken above him, you should be able to identify that the fact that they go 10 to 15 picks later is just getting better value around later. Okay, now we enter round 3, and we're just kind of sticking with the wide receivers at this point. Another wide receiver in round 3, and this is going to be like Michael Pittman was close. I'm not a big fan of Michael Pittman here because he goes right next to Mike Evans, right next to Derrick Henry, but there's a guy I don't like as much, and that's going to be DJ Moore. He goes in the 3rd round. He goes in kind of the early to mid 3rd round right now, and here's the deal. There's a lot that has changed for him since his breakout season or his career high season last year. For starters, he has a new offensive coordinator. He has a new rookie quarterback, and there's a lot more competition coming into this offense. And his new offensive coordinator coming over is Shane Waldron from Seattle, who kind of struggled to make the most out of their really talented wide receiver core. So it's pretty surprising and maybe even crazy to me that he goes ahead of Cooper Kupp, Malik Neighbors, Derrick Henry. Okay, maybe it's not crazy. This is just fantasy football, guys. We don't have to get all crazy about it or all wild about it, but it's a tad bit surprising, okay? How about that? As I mentioned, he's coming off of a career year. He was 6th in receiving yards last year, over 80 yards per game, and he totaled nearly 1,400 total yards. This is all fantastic, but again, he had absolutely no competition. Look at this. Please look at this right now. How absolutely ridiculously fucking crazy that this is. DJ Moore had 136 targets on the Bears, led by Justin Fields last year, their run-first offense. The next guy in line, 61, Darnell Mooney. That was in 15 games. It's not like Darnell Mooney played like 10 games. 15 games played. Darnell Mooney had 61, 75. Is that the good math? Pat on the back. I think that's the good math. 75 targets left. After that, less than DJ Moore. After that, Tyler Scott with 32, and then Chase Claypool with 14. Literally, one other receiver had more than 32 targets in this offense. Absolutely insane. There was no competition. But that's all changing, as you can see on the team changes page right here, and this is from the Fantasy Blueprint. You can get it linked down below, risk-free right now. Over 10,000 people are currently using it, and you can too to win your fantasy league. This is just a very small part of what you get. Well, what do they have now? They have Keenan Allen. They traded for Keenan Allen this offseason. That's going to be an upgrade over Darnell Mooney and Tyler Scott for sure. They drafted a top 10 pick in Rome Odunze, who's right here next to my big schnauzel, my big nose on the video version. Rome Odunze, definitely an upgrade by far. I mean, Rome Odunze can arguably be an upgrade from DJ Moore. And that sounds extremely hyperbolic and crazy, and right now that's not the case, of course, but if by the end of this year, Rome Odunze leads this team in receiving, that's how good of a prospect Rome Odunze is. Won everywhere last year, putting up over 1,500 yards at Washington. Yeah, he's that good. So there's just way more uncertainty right now for DJ Moore heading into this year. Yeah, Caleb Williams should be an upgrade from Justin Fields, but we don't know who he's going to favor in this receiving core. So now we go to round 4, and look, what do you know? We're staying at the wide receiver position, and it's going to be a guy in Zay Flowers for me. Look, there's a lot of guys around here. Malik Neighbors goes right next to him. I'd much rather have Malik Neighbors. I'm not really big on taking tight ends in this range, but you have his own teammate going after him here in Mark Andrews. I just rather have these guys than one Zay Flowers, because here's the deal. I know what you might be thinking. This is the #1 receiver for the reigning MVP Lamar Jackson on a team that went to the AFC Championship. How is this not a good spot? Well, please, people from Drew from Baltimore, please put your pitchforks down. I have no bad things to say about this player himself. He's a talented player. It's where he goes. Let me explain. As it stands right now in this Baltimore offense, I think that Zay Flowers is the 4th priority on the offense. The 4th priority is not somebody I want to be taking in the 4th round. And I'm not saying because of the other receivers. The competition is somewhat weak here, pretty weak. Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, a 4th round rookie, and Devontae Walker. But here's the priorities. I think priority potentially #1 is newcomer Derrick Henry, who signed this offseason. Okay. You obviously have Lamar Jackson in his legs as a weapon. Okay. And then I believe the #1 pass catcher on this team, and he was last year when these guys played together by far, is still going to be Mark Andrews. So I would slide in Zay Flowers as the 4th priority in terms of scheming plays on offense. And here's the deal. People might be saying, oh, Mark Andrews, blah. No. This is Lamar Jackson's favorite target. Zay Flowers last year earned 35% less points and targets when Mark Andrews was active. In fact, let's look at the wide receiver finishes last year, right? This is points per game. CeeDee Lamb was #1, Tyreek. If Zay Flowers without Mark Andrews last year was somewhere around here, he was somewhere around the wide receiver 15. So like people are looking at him like Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, right? Chris Olave. Okay, that's the tier that he was in. When Mark Andrews was active, the points per game that he had, around 11 points per game, was right here. He was somebody like a Josh Downs, Rashid Shaheed, Gabe Davis, #2 receivers at best. Nobody going crazy for these guys. So I just kind of want to paint that picture for you that now he's being taken in the 4th round. And of course, heading into year 2, he can improve. And now there's no Odell Beckham Jr. there, and they know how to use him a little bit better, we hope. They're saying they're going to put him in more spots, work him downfield. We'll see if it happens, because it didn't last year. I'm just a little bit concerned to spend that rich of a pick on Zay Flowers, who's currently my 53rd overall player. In the Fantasy Blueprint, he goes 48th overall. Just give me those other guys that we mentioned. His own teammate, definitely his own teammate, Mark Andrews, I'd rather have, and secure an elite tight end if you want to do that in round 4 instead. All right, I promise we're going to get away from the wide receivers, because now we have a quarterback in round 5 who goes way too early. I don't like taking quarterbacks early in general. They have to have mobile upside if I'm going to do it, and this guy doesn't. And honestly, the breakdown can just end there, because CJ Stroud in round 5, great real life player. Houston, I get it. Houston's getting mad again. The Nico Collins things, I get it. Hey, big fan. Paul Wall, Bun B, right? Everything. Hey, don't get mad. The fella is going ahead of Kyler Murray. Okay, a mobile quarterback, way more upside. Christian Kirk, Joe Mixon, his own teammate. These guys who are going to have larger roles for their specific position group when it comes to fantasy upside. I get how good CJ Stroud was as a rookie, commanding that offense. Insane leadership last year, never turning the ball over, but he just doesn't have the upside. Because of this right here, he only had at 11 rushing yards per game, 31st in the NFL. This means for him to finish as a top 5 quarterback and be worth a 5th round pick, he's probably going to have to throw minimum 30 and probably closer to 40 touchdowns next season. And that might seem crazy, but that's exactly how this works. Tua Tagovailoa led the NFL in passing yards and was 5th in touchdown passes last year, didn't even finish as a top 12 quarterback. That's how much rushing matters for your quarterbacks. So when I look at this and I scroll, I'm just a little bit confused. Like, you can get Dak Prescott 15 picks later. I don't even want Dak Prescott 15 picks later. Joe Burrow 20 picks later. What's the difference between these guys? They're in good offenses. They have 1 to 2 alpha wide receivers, just like CJ Stroud is going to have, except they go 2+ rounds later. You can get Kyler Murray 25 picks later for a guy who's going to have an alpha receiver, going to have a strong tight end, and obviously has the mobile upside. Here's the deal. If you really want to get some Stroud this year, don't be taking him in the fantasy streets. Just go and take his over for passing touchdowns or passing yards. This is on Prize Picks. You could just take his over 27.5 passing touchdowns. Just take that instead. Put $10 on that instead. And by the way, actually, they'll give you a free $100 to play with when you join with code SAL. So you can just go to Prize Picks. I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a QR code on the screen right now. And you just type in the code SAL when you sign up, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. So you can get up to a free $100. You can take that play and pair it with something else. Okay, now we head to round 6. And I'm sorry, but we're going back to wide receivers because honestly, there's just not a lot of terrible running back picks at this point in the draft. Like, you really can't overreach on a lot of running backs because they're naturally getting pushed down boards because people are taking somewhat tight ends earlier and just wide receivers a lot earlier. I have to pick a guy here. It's a good round 6. There's a lot of good players. So I'm not really hating too much Calvin Ridley, but if I have to pick a guy here, I'd rather have the other options that go after him, like Hollywood Brown, maybe even Ramondre Stevenson at the running back position. Chris Godwin goes right next to him, and here's the deal. I just think he goes a little bit too early. Now, when he left Jacksonville and signed with the Titans, that big contract this offseason, I immediately liked him. I was like, oh, this dude's going to get in the slot a lot more. That's good. But then that quickly came crashing down like a month or two later when the team, late in free agency, signed Tyler Boyd. You can see down here. And this is important because Tyler Boyd has been a great slot receiver for the past half a decade or so for the Cincinnati Bengals. And you can see just as recent as last year, second in the NFL in slot snaps, playing 77% of the time out of the slot. And now here's the big thing. His coach handpicked him. Brian Callahan was his offensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals the last few seasons, and now he's the head coach of the Titans. And he went out and handpicked his former slot receiver to bring on this team that he's already been vocal, Callahan, that he wants to throw the ball more and use 3 wide receiver sets more, which means that slot is going to be Tyler Boyd. And that concerns me for Calvin Ridley because last year he didn't get, even though he had 136 targets, he didn't get put in the right spots often. He was put on like the outside to just run go routes. That's not how you use Calvin Ridley's skill set. But if Tyler Boyd's going to be here, he's going to be in the slot. DeAndre Hopkins is a clear X receiver. So what does that leave Calvin Ridley? I think he'll rotate a little bit. I think they'll probably give him some more over the field stuff, but at times he might just be put into that role as the Z wide receiver on the outside to just go deep. So if I have to avoid somebody in round 6, I typically just see myself avoiding Ridley based on the fantasy blueprint too. He goes like 15 picks too early. And speaking of the fantasy blueprint, simple question, beautiful people. I've asked it before. Do you want to win your fantasy league? If it sounds like you click this button right here and you can get the fantasy blueprint that 10,000 plus other people are currently using. And here's the big thing. You can get it risk-free if you sign up through our 2 partners below. Risk-free, which that means if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I just refund your one-time payment by signing up with these partners. I refund it. It's just $10 for the entire year. You don't make your playoffs, you get it right back. If those partners don't work for you for any reason, just click this join today button and there'll be an option for you. Now, here's the deal. The blueprint will help you with your draft and then every single week during the season. I don't just abandon you after that for no additional cost. Every single week of the season, I'll send you waiver wire stuff, rankings, rest of season rankings, matchup notes, everything you need to schmack around your league mates. You can get it right now by clicking the link in the description below. Join 10,000 other people, by the way, or scan that QR code on the screen. Now, in round 7, the guy that I don't like, and here's the deal, it's not going to be Jordan Love. I've talked in the past about how Jordan Love goes too early. Very similar reasons as to Rashee Rice. Jordan Love was number 2 in passing touchdowns last season. It took maybe a career year from a passing touchdown standpoint to even be in the top 10 quarterbacks. I'm not trying to bank on that again. The guy I don't want, though, is Rashee Rice. And now a lot of people might go to the obvious point here, right? There's all the offseason noise, and it's kind of been quiet lately, at least as of this recording. He had 2 incidents, and now there's potential for a suspension. Some people say it's 4 to 6 games. Some people say it's 0 to 2 games, and obviously that's going to matter. Now, I don't have that information as of this recording, but here's the thing. I actually just don't like him anyways. He goes in round 7. I'd rather have Marquise Brown, who goes in round 6, or his teammate Xavier Worthy, who goes in round 8, those 2 other Chiefs receivers, but I get why people like him. He had over 100 targets as a rookie, was basically the number 1 by far wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs last year since Travis Kelce is a tight end, and he did this all as a rookie. That's great. So it gets a lot of people excited when they see him now in like round 7 or 8 of fantasy drafts, but it lacks a lot of context. Because for starters, his competition was extremely weak. You had a one-dimensional Marquez Valdes-Scantling who couldn't catch the ball, Justin Watson who couldn't separate, Sky Moore who couldn't get on the field as a raw player, and Kadarius Toney who had so many issues in his own right. I mean, at times, literally just catching the ball was enough to get you on the field for the Chiefs, so obviously Rashee Rice wasn't having a lot of competition. But his role was pretty bad. I mean, in college, he was known as a guy who couldn't be physical on the outside and separate, and we kind of saw that in the NFL. They put him in the slot a lot. He ranked 99th in average target distance. On average, his target was less than 5 yards down the field. That's not going to lead to explosive plays. And that's why you see this right here. His yards after the catch, people might say, oh, he's so good after the catch. He had the third most yards after the catch. No, it's because he was getting so many checkdowns. So when you pick up just an easy 4 or 5 yards after the catch, it piles up over time. So this is why we need to look at the context. Deep targets that help you with your explosive plays, not great. Only had 5 deep targets last year. Ranks outside the top 100 receivers. So when you look at his competition last year, and this is like kind of similar to what I showed earlier with DJ Moore at the wide receiver position, Rashee Rice, 102 targets from Patrick Mahomes. After that, the next closest was Justin Watson, who wasn't doing a lot with those targets. MVS, who wasn't converting on a lot of those targets, just 42. And then you see like Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore for 38. McCole Hardman joins the team later, 21. He might actually be interesting because of how weak the rest of their wide receivers are. Let's go back to the sheet here. So when this is your main competition and nobody can even get over 50 targets consistently and often downfield, that's why Rashee Rice had a good year. Don't get me wrong, I think he's talented, but now he has by far more talented receivers than he competed with last year. Guys that I think are more talented than him, and Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown, and that's going to start to matter because it's going to be these guys who start winning in the short to intermediate to deep ranges. Marquise Brown can win at all levels of the field. So can Xavier Worthy based on college. It's still going to be Travis Kelce who can win in the short to intermediate ranges. So what does that leave Rashee Rice? In a slot role where he'll be off the field in 2 tight end or 2 wide receiver sets, in my opinion, and just not winning downfield compared to his teammates, meaning, yeah, it's going to be hard to get as many snaps. And then, of course, if he's suspended 2, 4, 6 plus games, of course, now he starts to look really bad for you. So I don't like him either way. Even though he's dropped like a round or 2, it's just not enough. We now head to round 8, and here we go. Our first running back, because this running back somehow goes ahead of his teammate, which I think is completely crazy. Austin Ekeler goes in round 8, ahead of his own teammate Brian Robinson, who's by far the better running back, and by far will see more touches, in my opinion, in this backfield. Now, here's the thing. Ekeler still has a big name because he's done a lot of good things for people in the past. If you owned him last year, you know that's not the case, but now he's 29 years old. You can see right here, 29 years old, and here's the big thing. He's coming off of his worst season as a pro, 3.5 yards per carry. Now, his offensive line, and he was also injured, so you can see that, but still, getting older, more injuries will pile up. That's why he says he left the Chargers, because they were giving him too many carries, even though he only got 179 last year, which might be a high point. 10 carries per game seems like a high point this year. And then his targets fell off, 107 to 51, which I think is just kind of a factor of the offense they ran, but that's going to be the case this year as well. Because now he has a mobile quarterback with Jaden Daniels back there. And if Austin Ekeler is going to have a mobile quarterback, he's seeing less checkdowns. If he has more competition at the running back position, we pull it up right here. Brian Robinson, who was top 10 in yards created per touch last year, who broke tackles, who saw by far career high efficiency as a pass catcher, he's going to be the younger, more explosive back, fits the Anthony Lynn style run offense. He's the running game coach, Anthony Lynn. It just fits it way better. I think he's going to be the guy, not Austin Ekeler, who sees 15, 16 carries a game when Eckler's getting 6 to 8. But despite that, Ekeler goes before him in drafts because he has the popular name, because people aren't really remembering what happened last year with him unless you owned him in fantasy. And here's what makes it really bad for his fantasy value. He needs those targets. He needs those catches. But Jaden Daniels in college only targeted his running backs 8% of the time, which was like half the college average. So in this range of drafts right now where Austin Ekeler goes, you can see in the fantasy blueprint, look at the guys who go after him. Definitely give me Devin Singletary. Give me Tajay Spears over Austin Ekeler all day. I mean, I'll take all these guys. Brian Robinson for sure, his own teammate. I already mentioned that. Trey Benson, the rookie, I definitely want. You can see down here. Blake Corum. I'll take all these guys over Austin Ekeler. All right, so let's transition from the running backs back to the wide receiver here. And this is a guy that earlier this offseason, I even said it in a video, like right around free agency time. I was like, this dude right here, Jameson Williams, in round 12, 13, 14 is a great pick. But I said he's going to rise into the top 10 rounds, and then he's not going to be a good pick. I basically said that word for word. You can go back and check it out. I'm pretty sure I did, right? Now he's going in the 9th round, and now he's an absolute bust, in my opinion, if you take him there. Now, there's a lot of excitement for Jameson Williams entering his 3rd year. Hasn't really had a fair shake. Was injured coming off of an ACL his 1st year. 2nd year, gambling issues, his own problem. But after this offseason, no competition was added. Josh Reynolds was gone. They only brought in Traquan Smith. So it's Jameson Williams now going to start or have the chance to in 2 wide receiver sets. And then we get all the buzz 4 different times this offseason from his head coach, Dan Campbell, saying Jameson Williams, he's going to have a larger role, and he's the most improved player we've seen. And like I mentioned, he's only played 12 games last year. But again, suspended to start the season. That put him behind Josh Reynolds, who had a nice start to the season. So that hurt him. 2022, he played 6 games, only 9 targets. They extremely limited him off injury. And here's the thing. Now he's actually going to get a fair crack at it, in my opinion. But I don't really see where he breaks out. How is he worth a 9th round pick? Amon-Ra St. Brown is still there. Amon-Ra St. Brown ranks a top 5 in targets the last 3 seasons. You still have a run-first team with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. This team wants to run the ball first. And oh yeah, the number 2 pass catcher on this team, easily going to be Sam Laporta. So you're at best the 3rd pass catcher on a run-first team, and you're predominantly known for your outside speed. That's where he won in college, downfield. And your quarterback's Jared Goff, who's not known for consistently throwing deep balls downfield. So yes, I like taking shots on him in round 12 and 14 where he can pay off if he sees, a decent amount of targets and catches. Now in round 9, he has to see that much usage and more, and I just don't see it happening outside of like an Amon-Ra injury, which I'm not rooting for. Now, before we get to round 10, we actually have a double whammy for you. 2 players you have to avoid, the disgusting picks in this range. Look, 61% of you, the last time I checked, the last 28 days, are not subscribed to this channel. It takes 2 seconds. It's hard to forget, or it's hard to remember, so I get it if you forget, but just hit subscribe. It really helps. 2 seconds. My goal is to get it to 50% by September 1st. All right, now those guys in round 10, they play the same position. It is Tua and it is Justin Herbert, and it's similar for what we said about CJ Stroud and a little bit Jordan Love earlier. These guys don't have the mobile upside to be worth a pick here. You can get similar players 3 to 4 to 5 rounds later. And here's my evidence for you for this same player we're talking about in Tua, who led the NFL last year, #1 in passing yards with over 4,600. So now here's the deal. You go and you look at where did he finish? Oh, he had 4,600. Must have been a top 10 fantasy, maybe even top 5, right? Nope. He finished as the quarterback 16, even though he led the NFL in passing yards. And then you might say to me, well, Sally got unlucky with the touchdowns. You know, if he would have ranked like top 5, top 10 in touchdown passes, he would have got there. Yeah, I'd agree with you, except the fact that he did rank top 5 in passing touchdowns. He had 29 touchdowns. He ranked top 5 in quarterback touchdowns last year, #1 in passing yards, and still finished 16th. How can this possibly be? Because the dude averaged 4 rushing yards per game. It's over. It's over for pocket quarterbacks in fantasy football, unless they're your backups. You need a guy who can have mobile upside. Jaden Daniels in round 10 is a way better pick because of the mobile upside than these quarterbacks. And Justin Herbert has a little bit of mobility, but his team is going to be a run-first team this year. They project to be outside in the bottom 10 in overall points scored, and he's not like the running type of quarterback. He says he'll run if they ask him to run. I don't think he's going to be your Colin Kaepernick, right? His new offensive coordinator is Greg Roman, once coach Colin Kaepernick. He's not going to be that level of runner. So just avoid these types of pocket passing quarterbacks because like 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds later, you can get very similar players with similar upside. So round 11 we go, and this is a guy that I have no reason, or I'm just shocked as to why people are still taking him. TJ Hockenson has fallen like a round. He was going in round 10, but he still needs to fall like 3 or 4 more rounds before you even should consider taking him. Because look, if you don't remember, great player, of course, but here's the thing. He tore his ACL and MCL. So not 1 ligament, 2 ligaments in week 16 last year. Normally when you have a multi-ligament injury and you're like 5 to 6 years into your career like he is, it could take up to a year plus for you to get back to your full explosiveness, which for him would mean week 16 of this year. That's not great. Right now it seems like there's a decent chance he's going to be on PUP to start the year, missing at least 4 weeks, and then it should maybe take him another 4+ weeks to get back to 100%. Now that's just one bad part of it. The other bad part is right here. On the team pages change in the fantasy blueprint, he lost Kirk Cousins. What did he gain? Sam Darnold. Not great. What did he gain? Top 10 quarterback they traded up for, JJ McCarthy. It's yet to be seen how great he'll be. Definitely, though, I think we could assume, at least for year 1 right now, this has to be a downgrade from Kirk Cousins, who led the NFL in passing yards before getting hurt last year. So my simple rule is, generally speaking, I don't like drafting players who are currently injured. Now, it's different for guys like Jonathan Brooks, the rookie running back for the Panthers, who's expected to be back in August. We have that timeline. For TJ Hockenson, he's expected to start the year hurt. I don't want guys like this or Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell, the running back for the Ravens, who also has this ACL complicated injury, not expected to be ready week 1. These are guys, just why draft them? Take other guys around them who will be healthier. Especially the guys who go right next to TJ Hockenson, in upside running backs like Zach Charbonnet, in another tight end who will be healthy and is currently having a great OTAs and practices, in Pat Freiermuth. Take these dudes instead, less headaches. And when you get to round 12, avoid another headache in my opinion, and that's going to be Cole Kmet, another tight end who goes in round 12. And you might be saying, oh, it's round 12. Why can't I just take a shot on Cole Kmet? Because he's not going to do anything for you, fellas. He somehow goes before Noah Fant, which is just like mind-boggling to me. Noah Fant is one of the best late-round tight ends you could possibly get right now, and Cole Kmet's the exact opposite of that. Now, here's the deal. He's still a nice young tight end, 25 years old, was great in college at Notre Dame, that produces great tight ends. We saw Michael Mayer come out last year in the second round and do great things for the Raiders. And here's the deal. He was solid. He earned 91 targets, top 10 amongst tight ends last season. But like we mentioned earlier with DJ Moore and how nobody else was earning targets on that team, they just had no competition. Of course, that competition has now changed when you see who's out there, right? We can say it again. Rome Odunze is there. Keenan Allen is there. They're still going to have, they even have more competition in the tight end room there because they added Gerald Everett himself. So like, this is not the same situation by any means. You might see 15, 20, 25 less targets for Cole Kmet this year, and I wouldn't be shocked. And if that's the case, if Kmet loses these 91 targets, which he relied on last year because it's not like he was winning all that much downfield at all, actually, well, if that's the case, he's not going to finish where he did last year, why people are even thinking about taking him as a top 10 tight end. They say, oh, this guy finished top 10 last year, I'll go right back to him. No, he's going to finish where he did his first 2 seasons as either like the 21st, the 16th, let's split the difference, say like the tight end 18. Right now he's going around the top 12 tight end. So that's just a problem in my opinion for a guy who's not really known for winning after the catch and needs as much volume as you can possibly get. Now, these have been the players in every single round of your draft that you need to avoid. And if you're talking about like even more rounds, 13, 14, 15, 16, that's so late that it doesn't matter. But if you want to see the best running backs and wide receivers in every single round of your draft, these beautiful videos right here will show you exactly who you should be targeting at each position in every single round.